My name is Alice Monroe. I'm 26 years old, and if you had asked me a month ago what mattered most in my life, I wouldn't have said love. I wouldn't have said happiness. I would have said stability. The kind you build quietly, carefully. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone, but somehow holds everything together when life starts pulling at the edges. I thought I had that. I really did. I thought I understood exactly where the lines were in my life. What belonged to me, what belonged to the man I was about to marry, and what belonged to the complicated, sometimes exhausting family that came with loving him. I was wrong. The moment everything started shifting didn't come with a fight. There was no screaming, no slam doors, no dramatic betrayal you could point to and say, "That's when it broke." It started with something much quieter, something easier to ignore. His family. Ethan was easy to love. That's the simplest way I can explain him. He was calm, thoughtful, the kind of man who avoided conflict like it was something contagious. Being around him felt peaceful. At first, I thought that meant safe. I didn't realize it also meant silent. The first time I met his family was at a backyard barbecue. The sun was too bright, the music too loud, and I remember standing there thinking, okay, just be yourself. This matters. Marjorie, his mother, hugged Ethan like he had just come back from war. Then she turned to me, smiled, and said, "You're prettier than I expected." I laughed. Because what else do you do when someone insults you with a compliment? His father, Rick, shook my hand and joked, "So, you're the one who trapped him." And his sister Kelsey added, "At least she's not like the last one." Everyone laughed. So I laughed too. Because I didn't want to be difficult. Not on day one. Not in front of the man I loved. But I remember sitting in the car afterward, staring out the window, and asking Ethan quietly, "Do they always talk like that?" He shrugged like it was nothing. "That's just how they are. They like you." That sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. Because if that was them liking me, what did it look like when they didn't? After that, it didn't stop. It just evolved. Marjorie would glance at my engagement ring and say things like, "Oh, it's a bit impractical, isn't it?" Like I had chosen something childish. Rick would joke, "You're lucky Ethan isn't picky," like I had somehow won something I didn't deserve. Lucky. That word showed up a lot. And then, without even meeting them, they started forming opinions about my parents. My mom is a school librarian. My dad is a delivery driver. They're the kind of people who don't say much, but when they love you, you feel it in everything they do. When Marjorie asked what my dad did and I told her, she made this tiny expression, so quick you could almost miss it, and said, "Well, we all start somewhere." I wanted to say something. I really did. But every time I looked at Ethan, he would brush it off. "They're joking," he'd say. "Don't take it personally. Let's not start drama." So I didn't. I told myself, weddings are stressful, families are weird. Things would settle down once everything was official. But they didn't. They got worse. Wedding planning was supposed to be exciting. It was supposed to feel like building something together. Instead, it felt like being quietly erased. I wanted something simple, soft colors, a small guest list, something intimate. Marjorie called my ideas adorable. And then she started inviting people I didn't know. When I gently suggested keeping it smaller, Kelsey laughed and said, "Aw, she thinks she's in charge." I looked at Ethan. I waited. Because that was the moment, right? The moment where he would step in and say, "Hey, this is our wedding." He smiled, like nothing was wrong. That night, I finally said it out loud. I feel like I'm being pushed out of my own wedding. He kissed my forehead like I was overreacting and said, "You're just sensitive. They're excited."
Sensitive.
Another word that started showing up a lot. So I stayed quiet. I kept smiling. I kept telling myself it would get better. Until the rehearsal dinner. Because that was the night everything stopped being subtle. My parents flew in that morning. My mom cried when she saw me in my dress, and my dad hugged me just a little longer than usual. And for a moment, I felt grounded again. Like maybe I wasn't imagining things. Like maybe I wasn't the problem. Then we walked into the restaurant. Ethan's family was already there, loud, confident, filling the space like they owned it. Marjorie looked my mom up and down and said, "Oh, you look comfortable."
Comfortable.
Like my mom had shown up in pajamas instead of something she had carefully chosen. My mom smiled anyway. Because she has grace like that. Rick shook my dad's hand and said, laughing, "So, you're the delivery guy. Must be nice staying active." My dad smiled. But I saw it. That small tightening in his jaw. That quiet kind of hurt he would never say out loud. And Ethan? He heard it. I know he did. He just said, "Dad, come on," in this soft, almost playful tone, and then changed the subject. That was the moment something inside me went cold. Because it wasn't that he didn't notice. It was that he chose not to stand with me. Then came the seating. Marjorie had arranged everything so her side sat front and center, with Ethan and me. My parents were placed off to the side, with distant relatives, people they didn't even know. I leaned in and whispered, "Why are my parents over there?" She smiled like she was doing me a favor. "Oh, honey, it's just more practical. You know, family up front." Family. As if mine didn't count. I looked at Ethan again. One more time. One last chance for him to fix it. He sighed. "Alice, it's one dinner. Don't make it a thing." Don't make it a thing. So I didn't. I walked over, and I sat with my parents instead. And the room reacted like I had just broken some invisible rule. Kelsey leaned over and said loudly, "Wow, she's already choosing sides." I smiled. Soft. Controlled. "I am," I said. "This one." Under the table, my mom squeezed my hand. And for the first time that night, I felt like I wasn't alone. My first 10. But something else was happening too. Something quieter. Something deeper. Because while I sat there smiling, pretending everything was fine, inside, I was starting to realize something I didn't want to admit. This wasn't just about rude comments. This wasn't just about a difficult family. This was about the man I was about to marry, and whether he would ever choose me when it mattered. And I was starting to understand the answer. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. The speeches started after dinner, right when I had almost convinced myself I could survive the night without falling apart. Rick stood up first, holding his glass like he was about to close a business deal instead of toast his son's wedding. He said a few normal things about Ethan. How proud he was. How hard Ethan worked. How marriage was a serious step. Then he turned his glass toward me. "And Alice," he said, smiling like every word was harmless, "welcome to the family. You're a lucky girl. Not everyone gets to marry into this." People laughed. A lot. My face stayed still. But inside, I remember thinking, did he really just toast me like I won a charity prize? Then Marjorie stood. She placed one hand dramatically over her heart and said, "We're just so happy Ethan found someone who will fit in." Fit in. Like I was a piece of furniture being tested against the wallpaper. And then Kelsey, because of course she had to add something, lifted her glass and said, "Let's just hope Alice doesn't get overwhelmed. This family has standards." Standards. My dad looked down at his plate. My mom's smile disappeared for half a second before she carefully put it back. And Ethan laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly, but enough. Enough to tell the whole room those comments were acceptable. Enough to tell me I was alone. That was the moment the truth settled into my chest like a stone. If I married Ethan, I wasn't just marrying a man. I was marrying a system. A system that would disrespect me, shrink me, shape me, and expect me to thank them for it. And Ethan would not protect me from that system. He would ask me to survive it quietly. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. The lights were too bright. The mirror was too clean. I gripped the sink and stared at my own face like I was looking at a stranger. "Do not cry," I whispered. "Not here." But my eyes were already burning. And then one thought came so clearly it scared me. If they were this bold tonight, what would they do tomorrow? At the actual wedding. In front of everyone. When they had more power. When I had less room to walk away. I went back to the table with a smile on my face. But something inside me had already shifted. I barely slept that night. Not because I was excited. Because my brain kept replaying every word.
Lucky. Comfortable.
Standards. Family up front. Don't make it a thing. Each phrase circled around me like a warning I had ignored too many times. The next morning, the hotel suite was full of movement. Hairspray, makeup brushes, soft music, nervous laughter. Everyone was trying to keep the mood light. But I felt like I was standing underwater. My maid of honor, Tasha, caught my face in the mirror. She didn't ask the fake question people ask when they already know the answer. She just came closer and said, "Alice, talk to me." I tried to say I was fine. Instead, what came out was, "I don't know if I should marry him." The room around me seemed to quiet. Tasha froze for 1 second, then her expression softened. "Why?" So I told her. Not everything. There wasn't time for everything. But enough. I told her about the comments, the jokes, the way Ethan always asked me to let things go. I told her about my parents being shoved to the side, about the speeches, about the way he laughed. Tasha didn't look shocked. That hurt more than I expected. She just said, "So what are you thinking?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Marjorie. "Reminder, your mother is not giving a speech today. We already decided who speaks." I stared at the words. We decided. Not asked. Not discussed. Decided. I went straight to my parents' room and showed my mom. She read the message, and for a second, I saw pain cross her face. Then she did what she always did. She smiled politely and said, "It's okay, honey. It's your day." That hurt. Because she was trying to protect me from being hurt while she was the one being pushed aside. My dad read it next. He didn't smile. He just looked at me and said quietly, "Alice, are you sure about this guy?" I didn't have an answer. And maybe that was the answer. Then Ethan texted, "Can you not react to my mom today? Just get through it. After the wedding, we'll set boundaries." After the wedding. Like respect was something we could schedule. Like dignity could be postponed. Like I was supposed to sign my life over first and negotiate the terms later. Something inside me went calm then. Not peaceful.
Calm in a frightening way.
The way the air goes still before a storm. Because I suddenly understood that Ethan wasn't planning to change after the wedding. He was planning to get me through the wedding. There's a difference. At the venue, everything looked beautiful. That was the cruel part. The flowers were perfect. The chairs were lined in soft white rows. The lights shimmered gently above the aisle. Everything looked like the beginning of a happy life. But all I could feel was the ending approaching. Marjorie still found things to control. She looked at me for 2 seconds and said, "That lipstick is a little bold. Photos last forever." Kelsey passed behind me and muttered, "Try not to embarrass us."
Embarrass us.
Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "You look beautiful." Just a warning. Don't make them look bad. Ethan came to see me briefly before the ceremony. He looked handsome, nervous, soft around the eyes in that way that used to make me forgive him too quickly. He kissed my cheek and asked, "You good?" I looked at him. Really looked at him, waiting for one sentence, one sign, one tiny proof that somewhere beneath all that avoidance, he understood what was happening. But he leaned closer and whispered, "Please don't start anything today." And that was it. That was the final answer. This wedding wasn't about love anymore. It was about silence. My silence. My parents' silence. Everyone pretending cruelty was just personality. Everyone pretending disrespect was just humor. Everyone pretending I should be grateful for a place in a family that had never once made room for me. So when the music started, I stood at the back of the aisle with my bouquet in my hands and my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. For a second, the old version of me tried to come back. The version that wanted peace. The version that didn't want to disappoint anyone. The version that thought love meant enduring things quietly. She whispered, "Just do it. Smile. Walk. Get through it." Then I saw my parents. My mom clutching her purse with both hands. My dad sitting stiffly, like he was trying not to take up too much space in a room where people had made him feel unwelcome. And something in me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just cleanly. I walked down the aisle. Everyone stood. Cameras lifted. Faces turned. Ethan smiled like everything was perfect. And I smiled back. Not because I was happy. Because I knew something he didn't. By the time I reached him, my fear had disappeared. All that was left was clarity. The officiant began speaking. Love.
Commitment.
Two families becoming one. Every word sounded beautiful, and every word felt false. Then came the line. If anyone has a reason these two should not be joined. A few guests chuckled softly, the way people do because they think the moment is symbolic. I raised my hand. The officiant stopped. The music seemed to vanish. Ethan's smile fell. He whispered, "Alice, don't." But I was already turning toward the room. "I'm sorry, everyone," I said, my voice shaking only once before it steadied. "But I can't do this."
Silence.
Real silence. The kind that presses against your skin. I looked first at Ethan's family. For months, I have been dealing with comments disguised as jokes, insults hidden inside smiles, control presented as help, and yesterday, my parents were treated like they didn't matter. Someone gasped. Ethan reached for my hand. "We can talk after," he whispered. I pulled away. "No," I said. "You always say after. After the dinner. After the comment. After the wedding. After I'm trapped. His face went pale. Then I looked at Marjorie. You decided who could speak. You took over my wedding. You pushed my parents aside. And you disrespected me with a smile every time you thought I would stay quiet. Marjorie gave a nervous laugh. Alice, sweetheart, you're emotional. I nodded. Yes, I said, and this is exactly the time to be. Rick stood up, red-faced. You're embarrassing us. I looked at him. Good. I've been embarrassed quietly for months. Then I turned back to Ethan. You heard all of it. You saw all of it. And not once did you stand with me. He swallowed. I love you. I shook my head. No, you love the version of me that doesn't make things difficult. The room was so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. Then I said it clearly. I'm not becoming your wife, and I'm not joining this family. I placed the bouquet in Ethan's hands, and I walked away from the altar. Not running, just walking. Because if I ran, I knew I might fall apart. I made it to the hallway behind the ceremony space before my body finally caught up with what I had just done. My hands started shaking first, then my legs. Like everything inside me had been held together by pure willpower, and the second I stepped out of that room, it all loosened at once. Alice. Tasha was already there. Of course she was. She grabbed both of my hands, steady and warm, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. You're not alone, she said softly. Breathe. I tried. I really did. But my chest felt tight, like the air wasn't going in deep enough. And then my parents appeared. My mom moved fast, faster than I had ever seen her move. Her eyes already glassy, but her expression sharp, protective. My dad came right behind her, quiet as always, placing his hand on my shoulder.
Solid.
Grounding. Safe. My mom cupped my face and whispered, I'm proud of you. That was it. That was the moment I almost broke completely. Because out of everything that had just happened, that was the only thing I needed to hear. But we didn't even get a full minute. Because Ethan's family came storming in like we had just committed some kind of crime. Marjorie was first, her face tight, her voice sharp and controlled in that way that meant she was barely holding herself together. Alice, you are ruining our family's reputation.
Reputation.
Not, are you okay? Not, what happened? Just reputation. Rick stepped forward, jaw clenched. You humiliated us in front of everyone. Kelsey stood off to the side, already typing furiously on her phone, her expression somewhere between outrage and excitement, like she couldn't wait to narrate the scandal. And Ethan? Ethan came last. He looked shaken, but not in the way I had hoped. Not heartbroken, not devastated. Just overwhelmed, embarrassed. Like he hadn't planned for this version of events. Alice, please, he said, stepping closer. Let's talk privately. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And something in me settled completely. About what? I asked quietly. How I'm supposed to apologize for noticing? He flinched. Like the truth had weight. Marjorie's voice cut through again, sharper this time. This is exactly what we were worried about. This kind of behavior. My dad stepped forward before she could finish. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Finish that sentence. The silence that followed was different.
Heavy. Controlled.
Marjorie opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't finish. Because for the first time, someone had made her accountable for the implication behind her words. Kelsey let out a small, irritated breath. "You're going to regret this," she snapped. "Ethan is a catch." I wiped my face, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "If he's a catch," I said, "throw him back." For a second, Tasha made a choking sound like she was trying not to laugh. Ethan looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like he was finally seeing me, not as the version of me he was comfortable with, but as the person standing in front of him. "Alice," he said more softly, "I didn't want a scene." I nodded. I didn't want a lifetime. That landed. I could see it in his face. The realization. Too late, but real. Marjorie tried again, switching tactics like she always did. Her voice softened. "Honey, you're overwhelmed. Let's calm down. People will talk." I met her gaze. They should. And then something happened that none of them expected. My cousin Nina walked into the hallway, phone in hand, her expression calm but unmistakably purposeful. Nina was the kind of person who didn't speak unless she had something to back it up. "Alice," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "do you want me to send these to her? Or to the family group chat?" Marjorie's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. Nina didn't answer her. She turned the phone toward me. And there it was. Message after message. Weeks old. From Marjorie. Things she had said when she thought she was being clever. When she thought she was safe. Alice is lucky Ethan even proposed. Her parents are so simple. We'll shape her once she's married. Shape her. Like I was something unfinished. Like I was something that needed correcting. Like I was something they owned. I looked up slowly. Met Marjorie's eyes. "So you weren't joking," I said. "You meant it." Rick's expression shifted first. Even he looked uncomfortable now. Ethan stepped closer, staring at the screen like it didn't make sense. "Mom, what is this?" Marjorie reached for the phone, but Nina stepped back immediately. "No," Nina said simply. And for the first time, Ethan said something that mattered. "Mom, stop." His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. He looked at me, his expression cracking. I didn't know it was this bad. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't want to know." Silence again. But this time, it felt like something had finally settled into place. I slipped the ring off my finger. For a second, I just held it. Because that ring wasn't just a promise. It was everything I had almost agreed to. Everything I had almost accepted. Then I took Ethan's hand, placed the ring in his palm, and said the clearest thing I had ever said in my life. I'm not marrying into people who think love means control. My mom wrapped her arm around me immediately. My dad gave a single nod. That was enough. We turned, and we walked away. Together. Outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe without asking permission. It wasn't clean. It wasn't graceful. It was messy and loud and probably the most public mistake anyone there thought I had ever made. But it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like freedom. That night, after everything settled, after the calls and the messages and the silence that followed, Ethan texted me. A long message. Not defensive. Not angry. An apology. A real one. He said he had been avoiding conflict his entire life. That he thought keeping the peace meant doing the right thing. That he didn't realize he had been sacrificing me to do it. He told me he was starting therapy, that he had told his mother to stop contacting me, that he was sorry, truly sorry. Did I go back? No, because love isn't something you rebuild on top of silence. And I wasn't willing to teach a grown man how to choose me. A few months later, something unexpected happened. Marjorie sent me a message. Short. No performance. Just 5 words. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Did I believe she had changed overnight? No. But I did believe something else. Consequences had finally reached her. And sometimes, that's the only language people understand. As for me, what was supposed to be my wedding weekend turned into something else entirely. My family stayed. We found a small place by the water. We ate seafood until we couldn't move. We walked along the beach like we had nowhere else to be. And my dad, who had been quiet through everything, started making jokes. So, he said one night, grinning, anyone else want to propose this week? Or are we done? I laughed so hard I cried. Real laughter. The kind that clears something out of your chest. And that's how it ended. Not with me standing at an altar. Not with a perfect dress or perfect photos. But with me exactly where I should have been all along. Surrounded by people who didn't need me to shrink to love me. So tell me, would you have walked away when I did? Because losing that wedding hurt for a day. But losing myself? That would have lasted forever.